Once upon a time in Italy, in the tranquil northern town of Pordenone, a heinous crime took place. 2 young people were found in their car in a parking lot, shot point blank in the head. The killer was found quite quickly. He turned out to be an acquaintance of the couple. But the reason that drove him to commit such an act remained a mystery for a long time. Some are still searching for it to this day, and perhaps they may even find it. Once upon a time, in Italy, Teresa and Trifone were planning to get married. He was 28, she was 30. Both were born and raised in the south, and both moved up north for work. Teresa Costanza was a cover girl material. Although she never actually graced any magazine covers, with her looks she certainly could have. She graduated from university with a degree in management and marketing, earning money to pay for her studies by dancing in nightclubs. After getting her diploma, she landed a job as an insurance agent in Milan, but didn't give up her side gigs. In fact, it was in one of those clubs that she met Trifone. Their romance developed rapidly. Teresa moved in with her fiancé in Pordenone, while continuing her insurance career and taking on a more respectable side job as a yoga instructor at the Scorpion Sports Club, where her beloved also worked out. Trifone Ragone was also blessed with good looks. Nature was generous to him, but he put in the work too. The results of his daily strength training were distinctly visible under his skin. Trifone was rightfully proud of his physique, never missing a chance to show it off on the catwalk. But his main job was quite manly. He was a corporal in the financial police. His character, however, was not very disciplined, at least not when it came to matters outside of work and sports. In the apartment he shared with 3 fellow servicemen, Trifone constantly made a mess, and not just figuratively, but literally too. Before meeting Teresa, he would bring girls over all the time, and they partied so hard that the neighbors couldn't sleep and the couch in the living room broke. He was also careless with money. He paid for almost the entire cost of the TV in the shared living room himself, but was constantly late with his portion of the rent. In short, his roommates had reasons to hold a grudge against him. Trifone was especially irritating to one of them, Gesue Ruotolo. Rumor had it that this was the kind of hatred that's just one step away from love. Allegedly, Gesue had feelings for Trifone that were not entirely platonic. Of course, all sorts of things happen in life, but Gesue had a girlfriend, Rosaria Petrone, for a long time. Also a university student, also a beauty, but terribly insecure and very jealous. She constantly demanded attention, compliments, and demonstrations of love and loyalty from Gesue, tormenting him with suspicions, and ever since he left to work up north, she went completely off the rails. Using the names of her mother and sister, she bombarded her beloved with messages on social media like Rosaria is in a coma, Rosaria is in the morgue, Rosaria lost the baby, Rosaria has a cerebral hematoma that's killing her, Rosaria has a threatened miscarriage, Rosaria locked herself in the bathroom and won't open the door for us, and the crowning one, why did you make her cry? And Rosaria hated Trifone. The reason, as she confessed to her friends, was the fear that Trifone was pulling her darling Gesue into his escapades. The girl tried her best to drive a wedge between the friends, even lying to her boyfriend, once telling him that she was allegedly attacked and beaten on Trifone's orders, another time that he allegedly posted intimate photos of Rosaria online. In short, intrigues, scandals. The investigation wouldn't take long to follow either. On Tuesday, March 17th, 2015, Teresa Costanza arrived at the sports club after work at the insurance company as usual. She worked out, exchanged a couple of jokes with friends, drove off briefly to the store for some shopping, and returned to pick up her fiancé from training and go home. On the stairs of the sports complex, they embraced, walked out to the parking lot, and were getting into the car. It was the last thing they did in their lives before receiving multiple gunshot wounds to the head, 2 bullets right in the face for Teresa, 3 for Trifone, 1 in the temple and 2 in the jaw. All the shots were fatal. Several random passers-by heard the gunshots but mistook them for firecracker explosions. It was already dark, so no one could make out much. Nevertheless, based on witness statements, the couple's movements were traced down to the minute, and it became clear that it would have been much easier for the perpetrator to kill just one of them. Both Trifone and Teresa were near the car alone several times. but the attackers seemed to be deliberately waiting for the moment when they would both be in the line of fire together, and most likely wanted to shoot both of them specifically. Initially, they suspected it was a murder-suicide, but since no weapon was found nearby, that version was quickly dismissed. The police worked on the mafia angle. The attacker's hand was too steady. The shots were clearly made by someone professionally skilled with weapons. The version of illegal anabolic steroid trade and debts was also considered. Nothing was confirmed. The investigators were left with only murders motivated by jealousy, revenge, and personal animosity. That is, by someone from their former or current acquaintances. The experts also claimed that the entire picture of the crime indicated the couple knew the perpetrator well. When he approached the car, they weren't alarmed at all, remained seated as they were, calm and relaxed, and his shots came as a complete surprise to them. The investigators pulled on this thread, and, after reviewing the footage from cameras around the sports club and nearby streets on the evening of the murder, they discovered a grey Audi belonging to Jesue. They traced the car's movements on the cameras and, through simple calculations, established that at the time of the crime, this car couldn't have been anywhere else except the sports club parking lot. Moreover, after entering a camera blind spot, the car mysteriously disappeared in it for an inordinately long 8 minutes, which was clearly excessive to cover that negligible distance, but just enough time to assume the driver could have gotten out of the car, run into the nearby park, thrown something into the pond, and returned. In short, they hit the nail on the head. Divers fished a Beretta 92 out of the lake. A test firing showed that Teresa and Trifone were killed with that exact gun. There were only 2 tiny snags left. Who exactly fired the shots, and most importantly, why would they fire into the heads of seemingly harmless young people? What was the motive? And the investigators started asking questions not only to Jesue, but also to his friends. After all, they couldn't determine from the camera recordings who was behind the wheel of the Audi. And one of the guys didn't have his own car and borrowed from his buddies. It turned out all 3 disliked Teresa, who disrupted their jolly company. They referred to her condescendingly as Princess and Little Baby. But all 3 had alibis. After coming home from work, they all stayed in and played computer games. They didn't even go near the gym. Only Jesue Ruotolo's alibi quickly fell apart. The same neighbors recalled that, albeit briefly, their friend did leave the house that evening, and even snapped at them when asked where he was going. "None of your business," he said. He left not at 5 o'clock, as always for training, but closer to 8. His gaming partners calculated that right at the time of the crime, Jesue took a pause, more simulating presence than actually being there. Also, for some reason, Jesue denied knowing how to handle weapons, although he was required to practice at the shooting range as part of his job. And when the investigator asked how his car ended up near the sports club if he was at home, Jesue crumbled. Under the pressure of evidence, the guy confessed that he did indeed go out that evening, accidentally leaving his phone at home on the table. He drove to the gym to use the last day of his membership, couldn't find a parking spot nearby, and decided to go for a run in the park. But it was cold in the park and he went back home again. In general, he simply found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. And of course, not telling the investigation about it right away was a big mistake, which he deeply regrets. Yes, no argument about the mistake. Now the police were completely convinced Jesue Ruotolo took care to create a false alibi for himself, lied, and most likely continues to lie. As a witness, Jesue turned into a suspect, so they started digging into him very seriously. Well, and in the process of digging, increasingly interesting details surfaced. It turned out that when they first met, Jesue was literally obsessed with Trifone. He worked out with him, dressed like him, ate like him. It turned out that later these wonderful relations became extremely tense. If in 2013 the friends called each other a couple of times a week, then with the appearance of Teresa in Trifone's life, the calls practically ceased. And once the conflict even escalated into a fight. Well, not really a fight. Trifone beat up Jesue, that's the whole fight. Much more interesting is its reason. It turns out Jesue created a fake social media account and, calling himself Annalisa, one of Trifone's ex-girlfriends, sent messages to his fiancée. And the messages were far from harmless. Hi, I think you're Trifone's girlfriend. I wanted to tell you that your boyfriend is still seeing me. I'm with him because I really like him. You're a beautiful girl, but I'm obviously more beautiful. And I'm warning you, if you tell him, I'll deny everything. Because we have a lot of history and I don't want to lose him. I know you live together, that he's gone to Bari now. Open your eyes, you shouldn't stay with him. At first, Jesue denied that it was he who was hiding under the name Annalisa. Then he admitted that he did write the messages in her name, but blamed the ideological leadership of the correspondence on his apartment mates. Allegedly, they came up with everything. They composed the texts. An explanation was also found for why he lied again. The account was created from an office computer, and that's against the rules. According to Jesue's final version, he wrote to Teresa for her own good. He was trying to help the girl avoid trouble with an unworthy suitor. By the way, for this help, Trifone threatened to file a complaint about harassment and slander, after which Jesue could forget about his career in the police. There was no direct evidence against Jesue. There were no fingerprints on the gun. It was impossible to make out that it was he who was driving the Audi in the camera recording. None of the witnesses to the murder saw his face, and there was no DNA on the doors of Teresa's car. For some reason, Ruotolo threw away all his clothes and shoes and bought new ones. He also changed his car. But the assumption that he could kill, and the proof that he actually did, are different things. So the defense quickly concocted their version of events. Jesue found himself near the gym by chance, and lingered in the park to use the restroom. Well, and most importantly, he had no real reason to kill his friend. The lawyers miscalculated. Jesue was so angry with Trifone that he didn't calm down even after his death and couldn't hide it. Once, coming together with colleagues to the parents of the deceased instead of condolences, he suddenly stated, "Actually, your Trifone still owes me money." The mother didn't know what to think. If a person is talking about it at such a moment and in such a tone, then the amount must be serious. Who knows what trouble her son could have gotten into without her knowledge? Maybe gambling, maybe drugs. The stunned woman asked Ruotolo, "How much debt are we talking about?" and she got an answer. 25 euros. It turns out that when her son moved out of the shared apartment to his fiancée's place, a small part of the cost of the TV that he took with him was paid by the neighbors, including Jesue. The mother was dumbfounded. Could one really bring up such a paltry sum at such an inappropriate moment and in such an inappropriate form? But upon reflection, she understood. Jesue wasn't asking for money, but rather took the opportunity to say something nasty about the deceased. It infuriated him that the colleagues who came with him spoke so highly of Trifone, and he decided to correct the image that turned out to be too bright from his point of view in this way. To be fair, the TV was indeed shared, and its loss didn't please all three of Trifone's former roommates. But only Jesue went to Trifone to demand the money back, and he spoke about the debt not one-on-one, but so that everyone could hear. And only Jesue went to the mother of the deceased to say something bad about her son, not something good. Who knows? Perhaps that's why the court didn't believe Jesue's assurances that he loved Trifone like a brother and never wished him harm. The jurors who considered the case first believed that Jesue Ruotolo killed Trifone Ragone because he feared for his career in the financial police. Since being a colleague, he could report that Jesue slandered him, harassed his fiancée and sent her offensive messages, thereby jeopardizing their engagement. The court that reviewed the case at the request of the accused went even further. It decided that Ruotolo had not one but several motives, that in addition to his career he was worried about a long-standing, deeper and more acute feeling. The jurors don't specify what feeling they're referring to: friendship, love, hatred. They express it vaguely. It had to do with the emotional and personal sphere. It also remains at the level of assumption that when, with the appearance of Teresa, the company that existed in complete harmony between gyms, discos and women fell apart, Jesue felt abandoned and betrayed. But the judges are extremely specific in defining the feelings that pushed the guy to murder. In their opinion, they were feelings of hatred and anger that simply ooze from every offensive message sent through social networks. The judges emphasized that the messages were a plan developed out of a feeling of hatred or, in any case, deep disgust, with the goal of separating the two young people. The jurors also didn't overlook the altercation between Trifone and Jesue over these messages, as a result of which the latter returned home with a split lip and bruises under his eye and on his wrist. The judges noted that this parking lot fight at the sports hall in November hurt Rotolo's pride, that afterwards he returned home in a rage, and his apartment mates heard him shouting, "This shit has gotten to me, I'm going to report him to the police. I'm going to kill him." Interesting is the role of Jesue's girlfriend Rosaria in this whole story. In addition to the crazy messages about her own death that she sent, and which perhaps not coincidentally stopped immediately after the murder, she had access to the account from which Teresa was harassed. For unknown reasons and with unknown goals, Jesue gave his girlfriend the password to it. And this, firstly, doesn't align at all with Jesue's version that all these messages were written only to warn Teresa about a relationship with the cheater Trifone. And secondly, it's unclear why Rosaria needed this access in the first place. Trifone's parents have an interesting theory about this. They believe that Rosaria only pretends to be a crazy, hysterical woman, but in reality she is a calculating, cold manipulator, pretending to be crazy in case there are questions for her or her boyfriend. There is an argument in favor of this version. A message written by Rosaria, and then erased, was found on her phone, allegedly from Jesue, apparently for him to send it to Trifone. "I'm writing you a message because I'm ashamed to tell you this to your face, yes. I know what my girlfriend did. I know that she is a cheater and a traitor. I know that she caused you harm. I don't know if I can ever forgive her. She is very sick. She's been in therapy for years. She's always had these instincts. I'm still with her because I'm trying to help her." The investigation suggests the message was written in the hope that Trifone would stop suspecting Jesue and think that it was Rosaria who wrote the messages. But he wouldn't make claims against the abnormal girl. The trick didn't work. Trifone didn't forgive Jesue. Rosaria herself, who by the way was studying to be a lawyer, simply said about this message, "I don't remember anything." And about her access to the fake account, she explained even more logically. She knew that using office computers for personal purposes was prohibited and didn't want anyone to get punished for it. Yes, and one more detail. The day after the murder, Rosaria attended a party, but despite already knowing what had happened, she didn't tell any of their mutual acquaintances. Of course, in itself it doesn't mean anything, and such secrecy can't be tied to the case, but it's still kind of weird. She shared her worries about Trifone's bad influence on Jesue, but about his murder, she kept silent as if it was a completely ordinary event not worth mentioning. When Jesue was arrested, Rosaria was placed under house arrest on suspicion of complicity. Then she got 10 months in prison after making a deal with the investigation. By the way, this greatly pissed off her beloved, because it actually meant that she admitted her involvement, and therefore also admitted that the murder was committed by none other than her boyfriend. Jesue Ruotolo never admitted his guilt in the murder. His defense's logic was simple. His fingerprints are nowhere to be found, no biological traces, no eyewitnesses, and no serious motive for committing such a crime either. But the jurors had enough circumstantial evidence, and as for motive, of course there's no arguing that the defendant's motives were idiotic. The court didn't argue. It simply applied Article 61 of the Italian Penal Code, according to which filthy or senseless motives are an aggravating circumstance, and sent the vindictive policeman to prison for life. According to the court, Jesue didn't come to the decision to destroy the couple right away. His anger at his friend gradually matured, fueled by resentment, fear for his career, stoked by Rosaria's lies. After the beating, the hatred grew into a thirst for real revenge, which was only inflamed by Trifone's complete indifference to his former neighbor's attacks. Jesue harbored the same hatred for Teresa. He hated and wanted to destroy this couple, so he killed them, deliberately, in cold blood, calculatingly. He spent many months preparing a detailed plan, working out the details, preparing a false alibi, stocking up on weapons. Trifone's mother, who spoke with Jesue, believes that he doesn't regret it at all, because he's convinced he was driven by a sense of justice. Teresa and Trifone were, in his opinion, such wrong people that they deserved to die. When he pulled the trigger, he wasn't committing a crime, but delivering justice. She also says that she prayed for God to give her the strength to forgive, and she was able to do it when she saw Jesue in the courtroom, under escort, with his head bowed, lost, and pitiful. Teresa Costanza and Trifone Ragone are buried in their hometown. Giosuè Ruotolo is serving his life sentence. Rosaria Petrone managed to change at least 5 boyfriends before the verdict was announced. What happened to her now is unknown, but she doesn't maintain any relationship with Giosuè. Trifone's mother, who was entrusted with the flag that had covered her son's coffin, is thinking of burning it. After all, this flag was desecrated by the touch of the murderer's hands, who dared to carry this coffin along with the others. Once upon a time, in Italy.